I can take a look and see how's the best way to mix this. So I'm going to start with yellow, and that's the one that always runs out first, but we're going to wet it to get it ready, and we're going to load our paintbrush with lots of paint, lots and lots of paint on here. And now I'm putting it into my paint palette, but you could put it on the lid. So in my paint palette, I'm going to put a lot of this yellow. And then I'm just wetting my brush to try to get all that extra yellow off so that I can use it. I don't want to splish, I don't want to swirl it around in here. I'm just dipping it in so that there's more water on there. And I'm just going to use that on the edge of the palette to try to get all that extra yellow off. And now I'll get a lot of water on the brush. And I'm going into this color here, which is actually red orange in this set. And I'm going to mix this in. So I'm going to just drop some in there and then mix it together. And I'm getting a really dark, really rich orange. So let's use some of this paint that we've mixed. I'm going to start with the one that had more water, and I'm going to use that to start painting in some of my pumpkin. So I'm going to work first on this side and then go this way so that my hand, because I'm right-handed, doesn't go into the wet part. If you're left-handed, you might want to start here and work this way so that your hand doesn't get in the wet part. So whatever makes sense for if you're a righty or a lefty. And then I'm just painting in. And I'm going to skip a section in between so that my lines don't disappear. Okay, and I can use my hand just to see if it's starting to dry. Still kind of wet, so I'm going to wait a little bit more. And while I'm waiting for that to dry, I'm going to mix up another color. So this time I'm going to mix up a color for my stem. And I'm going to start with a little bit of that red orange. And a little bit of the yellow. And that's going to give me orange again. And now I'm going to experiment and see which color here gives me the better brownish shade. Let's see if it's going to be the blue here or the blue violet. I think it might be the blue, and if I'm wrong, that's okay. I can just try again. So I'm going to mix this in, and that's giving me kind of this dark olive green, which I think is a pretty good color. I actually like this color as part of my stem, but I'm going to put a little next to it because I want to make that a little darker. So if I want to make it darker, I can go in and add just a little bit of black. And now I have a very dark color, and I have the lighter color green. Okay. All right, so it's mostly dry, which is pretty awesome. It dried really fast. Okay, I'm going to just try to get some extra water off my brush because my paint is very wet, so I don't want to add more water. And now I'm going to go in with this orange here that had less water in it, so it should be a little darker. And I'm going to go to the parts that I didn't paint yet. Now I'm going to start on my stem. I just want to be really careful anywhere that there's something already wet to not get it more wet. But I'm going to go in and start with where I see the darker part of my stem, where there's a shadow. And then I'm going to use the lighter green. And now we also have in our paint selection white. And we can use white to make things even lighter. If it gets a little dirty like that, that's okay. We can clean it afterwards. But we can use white to make things a little lighter. So I want to lighten up this green here. So I'm going to add some white to it. And look at how light that gets. A nice light bright green. I'm using that for the very top. I'm going to show you a little trick. If you feel like your paint is taking a really long time to dry, or you want to lift up some of that wet paint, you can take your paper towel or a cotton swab or a tissue, and you can go in and sort of draw with it. So if you feel like you need to make something look a little lighter, because it had maybe a little too much paint, you can use your paper towel as a tool, as a painting and drawing tool. Now I want to work a little bit more into my actual pumpkin here, because there are some shadow spots that will make this look a little more 3D. So I'm going to take just a little bit of this blue and put it right here. And we're going to add some water to it so that it's a thinner wash of paint. And I'm going to use this blue in some of the parts where I see shadows. And that's mostly where the lines were. You'll see more shadows as it gets close to the line. This is getting really wet. You can see it's wrinkling. My pumpkin's not done, but it needs to dry a little. So I'm going to switch my attention to doing something with my background color here while my pumpkin dries. So for my background, I'm going to use this dark green that I had for the stem. And I'm going to use that for the ground that the pumpkin is on. Okay, and now I'm going to mix up. I used up most of my greens from my stem that I had mixed on there, and it's kind of nice because it ties in the color. And now I'm going to mix up a really dark sky color here to give it some contrast. So I'm going to use the blue violet. And I'm going to mix in a little bit of black. I'm going to get this really nice dark blue. And just so you can kind of see, what it looks like. I'll do a little test right there. It's like a dark, almost deep purple blue. It's really kind of cool. All right, and then I'm going to add a lot of water to that. And we'll start this at the bottom. Now pretty much my whole paper is wet, and there's not much I can do until this dries. So you might want to take a little break, come back to this a little bit later once it's totally dry. So probably if you're doing this all in one day, maybe wait like a half hour. But if you are going to come back to this another day, that's totally fine too.